Yep.
Oh, he gave you that wrong.
I'm giving you the wrong one. Oh, boy, right up there. Sorry.
Okay. I wondered. We'll start over. I'll now call to order the Lake Placid Town Council Orientation Workshop. This 13th day of May, 2024, in the Government Center of Lake Placid, and the time is 3:05. If everybody would please rise. Well, first, I'd like to make sure everybody has their phones off or on vibrate. If not, it's a $55 fine that goes into the Holbrook Vacation Fund. And I would ask our town attorney if he would please lead us in our invocation and pledge.
Dear Lord, thank you for the town of Lake Placid. Please guide and counsel our government as we conduct democracy for our community. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Holbrook,
Here.
Councilmember Hayes. Councilmember Hayes. Here. Councilmember Worley. Here. Councilmember Charles.
Here.
Councilmember Eberhardt.
Here.
Okay, at this time, I'll turn it over to our town administrator.
Okay, I'm going to try something different tonight, so hopefully everybody can hear me. Notice a different mic, since I'm bad about speaking and projecting. Purpose of the workshop is simply to go through kind of an orientation. We have 2 new council members, and to kind of go through all the Sunshine Law review. You'll see it on the agenda. I put times on there just because we have a lot to cover in a short period of time. It's just supposed to be an overview. And then it will lead hopefully to further workshops as the council wants to delve into projects or visioning or anything in depth, and we'll schedule additional workshops. So we'll jump into it pretty quick. Our attorney, Bert Harris, is going to start us in on the Sunshine Law review and structure and voting, abstaining, and public records. So.
Very well. You have my...
Is that where you wanted to start?
There you go.
I am going to walk through a few of our statutes and constitutional provisions regarding public meetings, sunshine, and public officers. The council is subject to an ethics requirement to take a certain number of hours for ethics and how to do government, which will be a deeper dive into many of these provisions. Today, I'm going to give a few of the high points and show you where the provisions are found. I pulled this together recently, and the first is the public records statute. That's also found in Section 24 of the Constitution. So public records and public meetings are kind of a big deal in Florida. The Constitution enshrines that you will conduct business in public and that all of our records will be public. There are very few exceptions for our public records. If you'd go to the next one. This isn't going to work out exactly as I had planned of what's going to be on the board.
Which one do you want? Florida Constitution?
I was going to do Florida Constitution, Section 24. I've spoken about that. The next one would be Florida Public Records, Section 1901.
That's not it.
You're well ahead. Let me just,
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
This it?
there you go.
All right, there we go.
Chapter 119 is the Public Records Act. It defines public records. It provides that public records are to be made available to the public. Every dot and tittle that Eva makes or I make or the mayor makes is not exactly a public record, but certainly when a document is finished It is. Not all drafts are. I don't intend to go into exactly where one would draw the line, because if you have a series of drafts, they may all be public to show the evolution of that. But if you're sitting at the desk with a pencil trying to scribble out where to get started, that probably is not. Public records include emails, texts, as well as written documents. Can you go to the next page or scroll up on that? It's a fairly long statute. You will also notice on 119.021, talking about custodial requirements. Each public officer is actually responsible. This is not something that we get to throw over our shoulder to the clerk and say, good luck. If it's on your cell phone, it's your responsibility to preserve your texts. One easy thing to do with email would be to copy EVA. That would put the burden to a degree on EVA. Or if the town wanted to get every commissioner or member of the council a cell phone to use with a separate email address, you can do that. I have found that personally very difficult over time, because I have one email address and I then have to go back and sort out public versus private, and you can certainly do that. It is more time consuming, it's not automatic. If you have your separate accounts and your separate phones, then it would be a little more automatic and a bit easier. Uh, 119.071. This is the one that makes public records more difficult, and that is the exemptions, the very narrow individual items. Remember, this is a concept enshrined in your state constitution and then fleshed out in the statute. And I've lost count, but it's probably 15 pages long of the things that you not only don't have to produce, in many cases you cannot produce. A lot of them deal with law enforcement. Ongoing investigations are exempt from public records. Certain private and personal information would be exempt from public records. Social security numbers. The list is so long, it is nightmarish, because when someone sends the record request to Eva or to you, somebody's got to go through this list of 20 pages of fine print to make sure you're not producing something you should not. Public records is also something that carries a statutory penalty of attorney fees. If you're asked for a public record, you have a public record, and you fail or refuse to prove it, to produce it, you can be sued and you will lose. Period. The duty is on you to preserve the public records, the emails, the texts, the copies. I was in one discussion with the Attorney General's officer, I forget her name, 10 years ago, and she would take the position that if Eva sends me an email, her copy is a public record, my copy is a separate public record. And I think that's a stupid interpretation, but she's the attorney, was the Deputy Attorney General in charge of it, and that was her interpretation. So there's a lot of the public records concepts that get down to how many angels on the head of a pin. And if you have a problem, it is best to stop and look. I can help, Eva can help, we can go to the Attorney General's office, but failure to respond is not the option, is not where you want to be. I have seen a lot of different agencies handle this in many different ways. FW Fish and Wildlife will have a separate officer that does nothing but search people's cell phones, records, and emails and responds to public records. And they'll give you a statement, gee, is this what you want? They're trying to insulate themselves from litigation and lawsuits. And that liability will pass to you personally if you lose, not just the town defending you. If you win, the town would pay that or has the right to pay that for you. But if you lose, you don't. It's also a crime. The initial, if you violate public record, no, that's sunshine, I'm sorry. Public meetings. Also enshrined in the Constitution in the same provision is a requirement that all meetings be public. And that is taken equally as serious as the public records. And again, there are continuing education courses that you're required to take, and I encourage that early and often, that will really get down into the weeds and discuss the exact number of angels on that head of that pin. If you'll notice on this page, I underline that last paragraph in italics, reasonable notice of such meetings. If we have a hurricane coming and it's upon us and we need to make certain changes or authorize certain expenses, that may be a shout out the front door, call the press, do what you can to make it public and get on with it. There are certain requirements for emergency meetings. That's a little bit different. If you get into, when you're in a public meeting, the statute also requires, and it's further down on this page, I don't know if you can do that, I think. There's your violation if you meet privately outside of a public meeting, one commissioner talking to another. Now, that does not include your other entities like the LPA. You can attend those meetings, or the regional utility. Any member of council can attend those meetings and can discuss in that meeting or outside of that meeting with one other member of the utility or LPA. You cannot encourage two LPA members to talk one to the other, but you can go talk to the individual or appear at the meeting. In most cases, we should be noticing, and I don't know whether we do this or not, the LPA will be on, or the utilities meeting will be on such and such a date. There may be one or more members of town council present. That's the safest, okay, good.
That is included in October.
And that's always there in case anybody wants to attend and see what they're up to. So it is, if you accidentally violate it and don't understand, it will be a civil citation. If you knowingly violate it, it's a second-degree misdemeanor, fined and punishable. And then the next line, you'll see where they shall assess the fees. Is that all of that one? That's more fees and trial and appeal. They discuss it ad nauseum. The Florida Constitution, municipal powers, if you can go to the one that says municipal powers, gives municipalities, it spells out the powers that our government has, that county commission has, and this is an excerpt from the Florida Constitution, and it basically says we can conduct town business. The Florida statutes then spell out these three provisions. One is established, two is the corporate powers, and three addresses annexation about taking in additional property. And again, that one says, yep, you suss it out in the Florida statutes. And there's a lot of Florida statute regarding annexation and our ability to make a deal with the county, for example, to annex enclaves, there's generally this is an oversimplification, three types of annexation. One, by consent. If someone is adjacent to the town, they can say, I want in. We have in the past, if you get town water, you're required to file or sign a consent. It's recorded in the public records so that when you become contiguous, the town can elect to annex. There is another provision on annexation where people can vote to come in. That vote can be done by a consent, and you get a majority of the owners representing a majority of the land to consent to annex. We've done those up and down 27, and you can annex that way, or you can actually have an election. So I guess that's the three types, and then the fourth would be make a deal with the county to annex enclaves. And we do have some of those that we need to address. See, what's the next page? Town charter. The town charter, we don't elect the mayor tonight. As you know, he's already in office. But the important point is to note that the mayor is both your chief executive and chief administrator. He executes the direction of the council and he administers the staff, presides at the meeting, and votes only to break a tie. The vice mayor, elected annually at the organizational meeting, that would be this, serves in the absence of the mayor, replaces the mayor should he drop dead. We have actually had that happen once. Dow Hall. Next, appointment of town employees, mayor with consent of council. That's an interesting question. Don't know exactly what that means. I would say we operate the way the U.S. Senate and the president do. When he nominates a Supreme Court justice, it has to pass the legislature. Same language. And then there is a list of the town employees that, or officer, no, employees that the town, the mayor would, let's see, appoint with the consent of council. That too needs to be done today. Next, supervision of the departments, and that fleshes out the mayor as CEO and chief executive and chief administrative. He bosses the departments. What have I missed? Kevin?
Voting and abstaining, just how you do that?
Yes, is there one more, should be one more page in there, voting and abstaining, I'm sorry. Florida statutes, vote required. It's 286-012, it's the same as the public records. And there's the language. It requires the clerk to poll the board, and it requires every person on the council to vote unless you have a conflict of interest. The statute goes on to explain where those conflicts are listed, so there's no misunderstanding. If Kevin can scroll a little further down, it will say, if you do cite to a conflict of interest, you have to name it and be very specific. There is a form that the clerk will hand you to be filed with the clerk saying exactly what your conflict is or may be. Now, Kevin, what did I miss?
I think you're good.
Just about on time.
Just about, pretty close. We're good. We started a little bit late and you finished
Do we
early.
get to ask questions?
You bet. I'm sorry. I meant to
Sure.
suggest that during the, as we go forward.
No, we have to stand.
So I'm interested on the emails, because all of us are using a personal email. So should we be getting a government email and keep that completely separate?
Yes.
I would like that. I mean, I guess
By-
I did not realize the extent of subpoenaing my phone and where my emails are. So
So you'll have town emails within the next week. We had to get with the change in the IT provider. We had to get all the emails straightened out and all the old emails archived. So before we canceled accounts and added accounts. So that's all got cleaned up at the end of last week. And so you'll be getting town issued emails.
and then are there retention requirements on these emails? Or is a Safeway copy Eva on everything and let her deal with it?
There is a schedule put out by the Florida Secretary of State regarding retention and destruction, and you certainly can follow it. That's a whole nother book because it varies. It gets down to that number of angels on the head of the pen. For example, if Eva gets a letter from John Doe about his utility bill, opens it up, scans the letter, throws away the envelope, some could take the position, well, the envelope might have had a return address. That's a public record. So it depends on what the document is as to how long it's kept.
I'm more concerned on, as a council person, my email, and we're going to set up a new email, so I guess I need to learn on what's the retention requirement for that, our individual government email that we'll have.
Your individual government emails are going to be covered under Microsoft 365. They're going to be archived. The town keeps all of those. You delete it, it's still there.
Okay,
So you
perfect.
don't have to worry about that retention. We're handling that on our side.
Okay, perfect. And then just a second is on the text, right? Because I don't know, I think most of us are using our own personal phones, and that's what's kind of being published. And yeah, there are going to be texts, so maybe at a separate meeting, we do talk about a government, I'm not here to, increase costs, but at the same time to protect all of us, because today's, communication is, everybody texts us. I mean, it's just a quicker way to do it.
I can tell you, I have fretted over the cost to government a long time and on several issues, and I've come to the conclusion that the legislature's made a policy decision that information will be open to the public, cost be damned.
Right.
So I think you make a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to carry 2 cell phones, but I also want to protect myself and the town.
And so how do we preserve the texting that we've gotten in the last month?
Are they still on your phone?
Yeah, how do I preserve it?
Right now, save it on your phone right now. I don't know whether, do we have I know the police department has a program that will preserve a text. Does the clerk?
The clerk does not have that.
Might think about that.
So,
Something we will research and get back to you on.
okay. And then the continuing education classes, where, how? Oh, excuse me, the continuing education classes, where and how?
A lot of times they're video. Commission on Ethics, I think, put some out, and I don't recall if
The Florida
Debra's actually taken them more recently. Debra, who did that?
I think it was the Florida League of City has some, and then I did go to another site that Eva gave me.
That was the ethics, so
That-
Florida
that's
League of
right.
Cities.
That's
and
right,
the
Deborah.
Florida
I just
Department-
took one a week ago Sunday, and it was Florida League of Cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have gotten an email this past week with the certificate that I took it, and I did not, so I've got to check on that. I just made a note to that effect. But that's where they are, is the Florida League of Cities, but it's the acronym.com. It's
I can
not-
send a link out to everybody.
But is there a list of which ones are required so that I don't inadvertently not take one?
The required one is the 4-hour ethics.
Okay.
So that's the required one. And that's the one that I sent out to Nell. So I will send you the link. Go ahead and do that, and then you've covered your 4 hours.
It was very interesting. It was I thought it was a PowerPoint thing, and I set it up on my counter, and I could work around it because I had it on speaker and still look at the slides, and, so it wasn't 4 hours just sitting at my desk, looking at that screen, so, but I thought it was interesting.
Generally, you have to sign that when you fill out your form every year for disclosure. Or when you fill out your forms for disclosure, they ask that, have you completed that? And you have to sign it, saying you have completed it.
Okay, I just need to do it ahead of time. Need to do it ahead of time somehow. Okay, and then my last question is, if I get an email, even if it's on the Newtown account, I should forward to you?
If we're going to be using a town email account, you will not need to forward that to me because it'll be archived
Okay,
already.
but if I get one inadvertently on my personal,
You
I
can
need to
forward it
forward
to
it to
me, and
you.
I'll archive it.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Kevin, I already have a town email. Is that changed with the new provider?
No, yours is fine. The mayor's is fine. We had the change, and so we had to get through that change. So we didn't have to, Microsoft, getting them to up and down with the emails, it's easier to delete, but we had to get the archiving set up. That's all set up now, so it'll be seamless at this point. And if you forward some to Eva, it's automatically archived because it went to her city email.
I have one more question, is on the agenda items that must be, they have to appear, items that we're going to discuss have to appear on the agenda. Tonight, we have an item that came up, for tonight's meeting, an item that came up that wasn't on the agenda that's going to need a decision. So how do you handle something like that? I mean,
So the add-on agenda items, when they come up, then you have to set the agenda. It's one of the first things you do at the meeting. And so you set the agenda, and it's added to the agenda at the meeting.
that's legal?
Yes. The that Attorney General I was speaking of really wanted, you could tell, a requirement for agendas to be published in advance and not added on for public notice. But there is no law that I know of that requires every agenda item to be listed. You can add late. Our town code says we're supposed to have everything to the clerk, I believe, by Wednesday, and before the meeting, and then the clerk is supposed to publish it, I believe, Thursday, or is it Tuesday and Wednesday?
It's Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We're able to get it out. We've been getting it out on Thursday.
And then it gives the mayor the authority or the discretion to approve the addition of a late filed item later.
Which has happened from time to time. Emergencies come up, different things have to be handled right away. So, yeah, it does happen.
If you can get it to Eva by Tuesday, it's much more manageable. If you can possibly get her the agenda item and the backup information on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I don't understand your mic. Your
Gotta get
your
closer
mic
to the mic,
something's,
Deb.
She just said to try and get it to Eva by Tuesday, and then it won't be an issue. You can share my
yeah,
mic.
your mic's reverberating.
And if I may, that doesn't give council very long to digest a 400-page agenda. And I do not pretend to defend that. And anytime council says, I've had a belly full of that and you want more time, I think you ought to say so, and that causes staff to back up. It may mean things don't get on this week's agenda, but if you need more time, you need to raise your hand and tell us. That's my 2 cents.
The county's pretty strict.
Very.
Yes, and they do, and people do adjust. They will adjust.
Okay.
Oh, somebody asked about ethics. I believe it's chapter 112.313. If you want to start looking at it, it will address things like nepotism, doing business with one's own agency. Basically, you cannot.
Chapter what?
Chapter 112.313. And special private gain if you're voting on something that could impact you or your family. Yes, ma'am.
I would also recommend to Google Sunshine Manual 2024. That will go over quite a bit. The new one's out for 2024, so that's
She's talking
a
about
good-
this book.
Yep, it's out. It's
It
on
is,
PDF
and-
form.
It lists every court case
Yep.
addressing public records and sunshine, and
It's a great
I
resource.
carry it to every meeting.
It's 2 years old.
Pardon?
2 years old.
It's because they quit publishing it. Now you have to print it.
It had nothing. I don't have the new one.
Okay, if everybody's good, we're going to move on. We're going to work into community partnerships a little bit. We have a couple of speakers that are going to work on that. And first is with the Chamber of Commerce, Jennifer Bush. Then you're going to see in your thing, some of this other is going to move fairly quickly as we go through, unless you have questions, and then we'll jump into the questions, but just kind of a broad overview on some of it.
Hey, how are you? It's Jennifer Bush from the Lake Placid Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to welcome all of you to Town Council. Thank you very much for what you do for the town of Lake Placid. Just to give you some background, I have been with the Chamber since 2019, just as the festival started. I took the executive director's position in 2020 when Eileen May retired, and we are just submerged in the community. We do everything we can possible. We are member-based. We have over 370 members, and we do everything we can to promote our local members and make sure that our community is prospering. Businesses are growing. Things are happening in town. We also host the Country Fair, first weekend of February. as well as the Caladium Festival. So if you have any questions for me or want to know a little bit more, I'd be happy to invite you down. We are also the visitor center, so we see approximately 12,000 visitors a year in the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the mural gallery. So we have all of the original renderings of the murals that are around town. I personally sit on as president of the mural gallery, as well as the treasurer of Keep Lake Placid Beautiful. So, and I have a few things for you today. Any questions for me? I'll give you a few things here.
Jennifer, you host the Keep Lake Placid Beautiful meetings.
Bill's next.
Thank you, ma'am. That was my bill, wasn't it? No.
Thank you.
I get one too? Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
So another, Chamber's probably our major partnership with the community, but another one that's big is Keep Lake Placid Beautiful, and the president is Bill Brantley. He's got a ton of history that he'll go over and talk about that a little bit.
Hello, Bill Brantley for the record. As far as Keep Lake Placid Beautiful, Bert probably knows a little more than I do. It's been around 25, 30 years approximately. Bert was president for, like in the first half of it, I was president for about 10 years. The last 3 years, Ray Royce and Donald Clerk were kind of back and forth president, and somehow I got nominated again. So I'm back at Keep Lake Placid Beautiful president. We have two funding sources. We get grants from Keep America Beautiful. Past few years, they have not had a grant program. We're trying to get back in sequence with that. Our other source of funding is the signs that you see on 27 and on Main Street. We collect about $13,000 to $14,000 a year on those signs. So what we normally do with the money, a lot of times we'll pay for outside tree work to come in. We shut down 27. We get with the Sheriff's Department. We close the roads, trim the palms on 27. We do some other projects, such as we get with the Sheriff's Department and the prisoners. They put out fertilizer before the Caladium Festival. They help weed. They help sometimes plant caladiums. Keep Lake Placid Beautiful also kind of administers grants on behalf of Town of Lake Placid. The first one was 27 beautification, all the oak trees, all the palm trees, all that was through Keep Lake Placid Beautiful and a grant that they were able to acquire. The latest one was Devane Park. That was right at about $1 million renovation of the park, built a new pavilion, moved trees, put trees in, did sidewalks and beautification as far as that goes. We are a 100% volunteer organization, which, as we know, it's hard to find any volunteers. Usually our board meeting consists of myself, Donald Clark, and a handful of other people and some town employees. We try to get some community involvement. Last couple of years we haven't. I think the last time we had them, we had probably 25 to 30 people after our last hurricane that cleaned up Devane Park. We all got out there and on a Sunday, and usually what we do is we just call our friends, they call their friends, and everyone comes out and helps. We're gonna be planning some more oak tree trimming on Main Street, try to get that cleaned up. We'll get the palms on 27 trimmed, the ones on Interlake trimmed. And then if you see things, you know, we always try to focus on trying to get things done before the Caladium Festival. So that's obviously where our eye is right now. It's kind of hard to plan things 2 weeks in advance, so we're trying to do that now to try to get those projects done prior to the festival. And as we all know, we love Lake Placid. Majority of our volunteers are not even town residents. They come from out of town. They come from everywhere just because they have a deep love of Lake Placid. Just as you know, even during elections, people show up that aren't even in town Lake Placid and want to vote. But we got a great response to most of our reach outs as far as the people coming to help. And if you guys see things that you want to kind of focus on, you want us to look towards, you want us to do a little bit differently, we're always welcome, welcome some ideas, and obviously always welcome help if y'all can. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
This is great. And so the medium, like on Main Street, is that, I'm trying to understand between the town and the organization, who does what, who pays for what? You do the planting, we do the maintenance, or how does
It's
that
really kind
work?
of a joint thing. If the town needs help, we'll call in. We kind of oversee the prisoners sometimes. We'll call and try to set up them to come out to do certain projects. I see Harry's been trimming the oaks on Main Street. The past few years, there hasn't been many community projects as far as getting people together and getting out and trimming. I'm president again. I want to try to start getting those guys that we call on a whim, and they come out and help us trim trees and stuff like that. So as far as paying for things, we mainly pay for fertilizer. If we pay for, out of our fund, we pay for certain tree trimmings, we'll do that if we got to take trees down. But really, Harry's been doing a great job as far as keeping up the past few years as far as the things that need to be done. We know there's a half dozen trees that need to come down. We know that, that's on the list, and we're going to try to start getting gear back up to get some of those things taken care of.
So then planting of flowers is your group?
As far as
Kind
that
of
goes, we do-
replacement of a lot of the flowers?
As far as the flowers, we do have a certain list we like to see people stay within, because we don't want these things that are invasive. We don't want, so we do have a list of things that we had just gotten from Mr. Ibanez, Jose. So if they do want to plant their own island out front, they can, but they need to stay within the same plant palette that everything's compatible. We don't want things to freeze every year. We want it to be hardy. We've taken firebush off because that's been a nightmare. That stuff grows so fast, we have to cut it down and trim it twice, 3 times a year. We just don't have the time to do that. So as far as the flowers, a lot of times we've talked about with Chamber of Commerce, if new businesses come in, if they want to improve their island, we can help fund it as far as that goes. We do have money to be able to do that. We've just really never had many requests as far as coming to us, but we'd be welcome to look at any kind of beautification. That's what Keep Lake Placid Beautiful is about. It's not just about plants and fertilizer and trimming trees. It's obviously the overall beauty of our town.
Thank you.
Well, that's good to know because, like I call it, in our travels, when we were introducing ourselves, a lot of people were saying the islands on Interlake look so sad compared to how they were years ago. And I think it's just a confusion about who to go to ask for plantings and what they can do and what the list is, and any suggestions on how we can get people up to speed, the shops and I don't know, just something.
As far as that goes, obviously, we'll start going down island by island, looking at it. And I'll tell you, the real struggle, and the town employees can tell, is irrigation. There could be 5 full-time irrigation guys, and they'd still be busy all the whole time. Our inconsistency with some of our wells, which is very important to try to get reuse down 27. If we can figure that in some way of the grant to get that down there, because that's going to be way more dependable. We have wells that go down. We have wells that we can switch back and forth. But as you see when you drive down 27, you see these green spots that are 5 foot from the irrigation, and the rest of it's dead. We just need more consistent irrigation. And if we don't have irrigation in those planters and working properly, doesn't matter what we plant, we're on a sand ridge, they're going to die. So we're going to try to focus on the irrigation and eventually, hopefully, have reuse to be able to have it more consistent.
Yeah. In the meantime, maybe take out some of the dead bushes that are there, and just put down mulch. I'm getting anxious that the town looks perfect for the Caladium Festival.
Right, and we want to do that too. Obviously, as far as mulching's a big plan. A lot of times we'll get a semi-mulch and have the sheriff's department help us put it out, because right now nothing's growing because it's dry, but as soon as the rain starts, the weeds come. And obviously, the more mulch we have and easier to spray the Roundup, then it makes more sense, because we can't sit there and pull weeds in all these planters. So we want to mulch as much as we possibly can to prevent that.
Yeah, so, well, anyway, sign me up when you have the volunteers.
I will call you, not a problem.
Maybe people don't even know that they could help.
Yep, like I said, people come out, like I said, majority of the people, just because they all want to be part of the town, they're not town residents. They're just people that live everywhere else that just come together and try to beautify the town. Okay. And then, since we're talking as far as community, I got 2 other things real quick as far as the TDC and the RPAC. As far as when I was on school board, I was on RPAC for about 10 years. That is one of the most important county groups to have important influence from this board. There's a ton of money that gets funneled different ways. And let me tell you what, Avon Park has great representation. They are going to get everything they can get. And it's just between the Sutherlands and some other people I have there. So you need really good reputation on that. And same with the TDC. TDC, I've always felt we're a stepchild. always push to get our own TDC down there, but there's a lot of money that does not come our direction through the TDC. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Bert, did you want to add to the Keep Lake Placid since you started it?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to take a step back. First, one of the questions was, how do you draw the line between town and KLPB? And that is, it's very difficult, it's blurry. It's, if Billy and I have time and volunteers, we'll do, and if we don't, it falls in Kevin's lap. We started Keep Lake Placid Beautiful 30 years ago after we got a lot of these grants down Interlake. We raised the money on Main, that wasn't a grant. And it was obvious the town of 2,000 people couldn't afford to maintain 27. So we created that as a 501c3, got grants to try to supplement the town budget for fertilizer and maintenance. And that's, the grant went away. Billy, is it back now?
We can apply for it again. During that COVID time, it wasn't available. So I think we're reapplying now.
One of the funnest projects was South Main Street, and I'll tell this story and then I'll shut up. We put out an irrigation system which is no longer in use. We tried to use natives, the palmettos, oak trees, some pine trees, and we tried to get all the heavy work done in advance and invited the community to come out with us and literally dig a hole, sit the plant in the hole by the irrigation, and turn it on. And we had 120, 150 people. John was there, show up to help. People that had never been part of the program. The banks brought T-shirts and somebody brought coolers of beer, and Debra was right in the middle of it. So there's a lot of people that respond to help the town if asked.
Parents brought their kids. I mean, it was
Quite a show.
it was great.
Yeah, there was another one on North Main when the crepe myrtles. Somehow I found out that us also on North Main, planting the crepe myrtles. I think I helped on that one, and there was a whole team of people that showed up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So those are those two. We also have, down at the ball fields, we have the Miracle League field, and these are more financial for us as different to a partnership. But we help fund the JC's 4th of July. Little League Baseball obviously is down on the fields almost on a nightly basis. It should be about the end of their season. It is my grandson's season. So Soccer League, if it reorganized, we've been out working on the irrigation on that one for the last several days, trying to get that one back up and running because there's been conversations with the Soccer League about them getting reorganized and be using the fields. So it'd be good to see kids out playing those sports. The Halloween Trunk or Treat, you're going to see coming up asking for waiver of fees, the Smoke 5K, the e-learning 5K. Those are all things that we typically waive the fees. That's a council decision annually. And that is primarily police department and public works as far as picking up trash and organizing things and locates. Every time we're in Devane Park for Caladium Festival, we have to make sure they don't hit our fiber line and our water lines. We mark those out and then pressure clean the sidewalks and get those set up. So those are kind of the community partnerships, if you will, that at least I know about or I've learned about since I've been here. So we're going to move on to council advisory boards, and y'all just interrupt me if you have a question. So council advisory boards and other county boards. So the local planning agency, you've heard some conversation about that. We have 5 members currently on the board. You're allowed 3 alternates. We only have 2 at the moment. You're supposed to own in town, or you're supposed to live inside the Lake Placid Regional Plan area. So those are the kind of requirements for the local planning agency. Community Redevelopment Agency, on the agenda tonight for some discussion. You currently have 5 council members. You can expand with a max of 2 more community members. They meet quarterly. The Lake Placid Regional Utility Advisory Commission that Councilmember Joy sat on for a number of years. They have 5 members. They can have up to 7. There is a requirement, they want expertise in the utility financials. It's not just a general membership type thing, it's a little bit different. And they meet every other month, and they also have a council liaison, which you'll have as part of your organization tonight. Tourist Development Council, That membership moves between Avon Park and Lake Placid. So it bounces back and forth. Sebring is being, by the definition of when it got created, Sebring has a permanent seat on it since they're the largest municipality in the county. So if we ever became larger than Sebring, we would take that and have a permanent spot. That is currently in our turn. That was Charlie Wilson's seat, so you'll make a decision tonight on who's going to fill that seat on the Tourist Development Council. RPAC, which is the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee, they meet quarterly. There are 2 voting members from our town and 1 alternate. Currently, we have Harry DeBano's last meeting is on the 15th this month, and then he goes off in July, but they don't meet again until August. They meet quarterly. So Eva's term ends in December. So over the next few months, actually, tonight you'll have on the board to either choose one of the council members or myself to be on that RPAC committee. And then you have Heartland Regional Transportation Planning Organization. The board members of that are mainly county commissioners. 7 counties, I may be wrong on that one, 6 or 7 counties that are represented. There are some of those, or cities are represented. We don't have a representative on the board. It's representative at large by Commissioner Arlene Tuck. We do have a board member or a technical advisory committee member, and that's Dana Riddell. So that's kind of the advisory boards and county boards. So just going over real quick, departments and personnel. Just so you know, administration, that's myself, town administrator. We have the town engineer, Dennis Murray, who's in the back, and the town clerk, that's Eva, that's the administrative side of it. And so finance, Rachel Osborne is our finance director. And in addition to payables, receivables, and payroll, which are typically what you see in a finance department, it also includes all of the utility billing, customer service, human resources. She sits on the PRM board. So I think Bill mentioned it, or somebody mentioned this, we're 2,257 people, I think, is our last census count or something like that. So we're a very small organization in the town of Lake Placid, though that we represent and have use of about 25,000 people that use our facilities and eat downtown every day and that kind of stuff. So anyway, so we all wear a lot of hats in the town. Planning, zoning, and code enforcement is Dana Riddell, and you're going to hear from her in a little bit. The police department chief, Mark Snyder, he also includes the crossing guards. Up until last year, that also included code enforcement, but the town moved code enforcement into town hall, and that's now under Dana. So facilities and recreation, public works is Alan Kiefer. And not only does he streets, sidewalks, garbage, he also takes care of the cemetery, the parks that are not Lake June Park, and a whole lot of irrigation. Then town properties, which is what I like to refer to as facilities and recreation, is Harry DeBano. He takes care of all the town hall, all of the maintenance of facility around that. Lake June Park, which includes the ball fields and the boat ramp and all that. A lot of the landscaping down Interlake 27, Maine, and a whole lot of irrigation. We have spent probably $10,000 or $15,000 replacing heads this year. It's an ongoing challenge, broken lines. We have a lot of irrigation, a lot of it's old irrigation, so it's going to be a constant until we get, particularly along 27, if we can get some reuse grants and replace some of that irrigation. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But we're hoping after the Dow Hall intersection project or Tower Street and 27 intersection project, we've had meetings with DOT about doing a large grant and rehabilitating some of the irrigation and tying in the reuse with the new plant. So it's a timing issue. Our reuse is actually going to go down with the construction of the new plant. So we're going to be relying entirely on our wells. We won't have reuse for approximately a year while the new plant's constructed. And so that's going to affect some of our landscaping as we keep trying to make it all work off of our wells. We lost a well about a year ago, unless we redig that well, which we're trying to avoid. It's under a power line. Duke stopped us from replacing the pump, and just because of location. So our only option there would be to dig another well. And then utilities, which I'm still currently in charge of, is water and wastewater. We have 4 water plants and 3 wastewater plants. The 3 wastewater plants are going to be combined into the new wastewater plant. So, and then I'm actually moving ahead, so that's a good thing. We're going to go to Eva, and she's
Can we
gonna-
ask questions?
Oh, absolutely, I'm
Just
sorry.
a
Yes,
couple.
question.
What's the acronym PRM? You said somebody's on a PRM board?
Public risk management, it's a,
Same as in business, okay.
yes, public risk management is our insurance company, to say so. Each, it's made up of member cities. It's kind of like a co-op, for lack of a better word, on the top of my head. It's a consortium of municipalities that have joined together, and they buy insurance as a pool. It's an insurance pool. And then the pool goes out and buys excess reinsurance. So that's public risk management, and Rachel sits on the board, and I'm the alternate on that board.
And then do we have, how many parks do we have? And do we have a list that we could get a copy of?
Certainly, we can do that, and I meant to have it, and I didn't bring it, but I actually have a list of all of our properties in the town. So if I have the half hour in between.
That's fine.
I might get it to you tonight, but I have that available. Alan, you may have to help me on that. We have Lake June Ball Fields, we have Stewart Park, we have Johns Park, we have a little pocket park behind the police station. We have.
Taylor Park.
What?
Taylor Park.
Taylor Park is the one off
Just,
of
yeah, you don't have to
Trinity,
inventory, if
and
you
then I
can
think we
get a.
have one.
I'm just curious, as on your staff, Harry has Lake June Park, but all the others are under somebody else. What was the thinking of not keeping all the parks under one organization structure?
Alan, maybe you've been here long enough, I have no idea.
The recreation facility basically takes like a lot by itself because it organizes the leagues and everything down there. Whereas the rest is just maintaining smaller things, not as much playground equipment like Johns Park, Stewart Park. As far as why the division of supervision, my crew is the one that just maintains it all, where his department, I believe he's only got 2 employees, wouldn't be enough to maintain everything.
Thank you.
I think when we hired somebody down at the parks, there was no pilot. There was no captain in charge of the people, and the people needed guidance. So that's when that position became more of a Lake June Park, where there's people, and they need to be managed and helped. And, you know, all of the equipment here, when you see this list, the equipment building is on that list, but he manages all that. He manages a lot of the equipment, which is stored out here in our little building out here. So that was a necessary thing because we needed him because of the people and registering and things like that.
We have people that use that park, and there's a fee to their using it and a time during which they can use it. So that way they don't overlap each other, which is not consistent with the rest of the parks. The rest of the parks, people can just come use, but you know, because you have soccer and you have softball and all this kind of stuff, you don't want them running into each other, and they pay a fee to be there.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, then we're going to move on. Let Eva talk a little bit about budget timelines. You're going to be seeing that coming up here before long when we run into budget workshops. Let me pull up.
Scroll up, please, Kevin.
Oh,
Thank you.
yep. I'm going to get rid of that, so.
You went away. Don't do that.
Okay. So the budget process starts, we will come to you in June and ask you to pick some dates for workshops. But I've kind of laid out all the timelines. This is state mandated, these timelines. We have to stay within that. Now, Rachel will hand out, you know, and department heads handle all the budget, putting it together. I'm the one that gets the contacted by Highlands County. They'll send me an estimate starting in June of all the taxable values. That's our starting number. I will fill out a DR 420, it's all through the state. So we drop our numbers in, and it'll calculate what we're looking to see we can use as our budget. But the timelines are very important in all of this. So just some of the things, I handle the trim, I do the reporting to the state. Finance director, I will give her the dollar, the dollar amount that I calculate out, and then they get started on the budget process. We'll pick our workshop dates starting in July. Now in July, as you go through, let's see, flip over there, town administrator review, go to the next one, I think. Next slide. Is that the one? Keep going. Okay, so Highlands County will send us an estimated 2024 taxable values. These are not the final values, but that gets us started, so we can do our calculations through this software. On June 10th, I'll ask you about picking 3 budget workshops. We've been doing advertising for 3 for as long as I've been here. Couple of years, we used 2 of those workshop dates. The rest of the time, council was able to get through line by line by line and went through the whole budget, and they were able to do it in 1 workshop. So it all depends on how you want to do it. But we do advertise for the 3. And typically, there are a couple in July, at the end of July, and then 1 in August. So it just depends. So we'll do that. Highlands County appraiser will then give us another, so they give me a little preliminary at the beginning of June. That just gets us started. That's not the final numbers. They'll send me the final numbers on June 30th. And then I will go on to the site for state of Florida, and I'll do all the calculations. There's many forms. You have your TIF, which is your CRA funds. So a lot of calculations go in all of this to get that number. So then the big day starts with July 8th as your council meeting. At that time, council will make a decision. I will present, and the finance director and I will present you with what the totals add up to, where are we at? And we'll go into rollback rate in a minute, but I'll give you both scenarios of where we were at last year using that millage rate, and if we use the rollback rate where we're at, so it'll give you a better idea. Then you'll make a decision to do a proposed millage. This gets us started on our budget to be able to get ready for those budget workshops. You have to keep in mind that whatever proposed millage you pick, you cannot, does it go down? You can't go up. So if you set it here, you can't go back up. So historically, they've kept it the same, and then come that September meeting, we've reduced it then, just to keep it where we have some flexibility. Because if you don't do that, you can't raise it again that September meeting. Any questions on that? Okay. So, and keep in mind also, although you're reducing your millage, let's say we're going to reduce it from what we did last year, if it's higher than the rollback rate, it's still considered a tax increase because it's not part of that rollback rate.
Excuse me.
And the rollback rate is basically what it is rate that would regenerate the same amount of property tax revenues as approved the prior year. So that's what a rollback rate is. So it's the same amount of property revenues. So we'll present that all to you. Once you've decided, voted on that, picked your millage, then we'll go on to do the budget workshops, and we move forward. And then advertising starts coming into play for on my end and getting these numbers to the county, because by from July 31st, I have to get it back to the preliminary DR 420 has to go back to the county. County does, your little trim things you get in the mail. You're going to see our first meeting date on that trim, because I have to have that information to them, because that's actually our first advertising is through that trim notice. But on top of that, I still advertise 2 consecutive weeks prior to the first hearing. So there's more than just the mandated. We do that extra advertising in August, for the ordinances. So, and then comes September 9th, your first meeting, your first reading. You can reduce a little bit. very short timeline there. We have to adopt that following Monday. So that following Monday is the 16th. I have to have the advertisement. There's specific, I don't know if you've all seen the newspaper. It's got the budget summary. It's big, it's in the paper, it's state mandated how big it needs to be. So that kind of says everything in a nutshell. It's a very tight schedule. And we try to move through it and get you all the information you need. Any questions?
I do.
I know, I
Just
talk fast.
back up 2 charts, just real quick, just so I can understand. So in June, you get the preliminary, early June, the second chart there, Kevin.
Right.
And then the staff starts working on the budget at
We
that
start
point?
looking at it because they've given us.
Because you
just
have an
estimate.
idea of how much we have to spend in that, okay? Next chart, I think it's the third chart I want to see. Okay, so,
This one? Or back the other?
well, that's fine. And so at the July 8th meeting, once the proposed millage is passed, once we approve it, are we approving at the July meeting?
You are
the
approving a
millage,
proposed
based on
millage.
the staff's preliminary, these are what we're thinking?
Yes.
Okay,
And at that point, when you pass that millage, that's when you'll move forward with the budget process, but you
Yep.
can come along in September and say, okay, we can reduce it. And so over the course, like I said, we've maintained the previous year and then reduced it that September, just depending on how the budget workshops
okay,
go.
perfect, thank you.
I think that's it.
Is that it? Good? Any other questions about the budget? All right. All right. Dana, you got extra time.
Yeah.
Dana's going to talk about planning and zoning, and she already had the most time because that is a long, complicated subject, which will probably warrant its own workshop at some point in the future. But
Exactly right. Good afternoon, Town Council. It's great to see everyone today. And we are going to have the most fun conversation out of the whole day, which is planning and zoning. And I might be a little biased, but you know, this is going to be great. So do not hesitate to interrupt if you have any questions. And if I don't have an answer for you at this very moment, I'll do some research and get back to you. So I wanted to go over first my duties, the boards that I'm liaison to, and the types of hearings that we hold. I think there's a misconception a lot of times that the word planner makes you think that maybe I'm out there soliciting business, calling people up on the phone, asking them to come to the town, or maybe sometimes the general public thinks that a business wants to come in and I say, no way, Jose, and I slam up the phone, and I never do that. I don't do either of those things. What I do is I handle customers who want to come and locate in the town. They've made the decision that the town is the right place for them, and they need to know how to fit into our framework and what our rules and regulations will allow them to do. So I take care of daily permitting and inquiries. This is usually just general members of the public. We don't have that many permits that come in a week. It could be anywhere from 0 to maybe 10 permits a week. I'm staff liaison to the local planning agency and the Board of Adjustment. I'm the one who adds things to the agenda, accepts applications, processes them. I write staff reports for every application that comes before us that analyze how a decision can be made based on the facts presented. They're all usually a summary of my findings based in a planning framework. If you attended the mock planning and zoning commission meeting, then you know it. I am not the expert witness, but I take all this expert testimony, I put it together, and I present it to you in hopefully a format that's a little bit more digestible. I try to do long-range planning, and this can be hard because we have a lot of plates that we're spinning, and so that means looking out into the future and sometimes rewriting portions of our code or redesigning certain elements of our comprehensive plan. And later at tonight's meeting, we'll talk about one of the ways that we're able to do that, and it is through a grant that we'll obtain through a different agency if the board is in agreement to that. I coordinate the commercial site plan review process, concurrency, subdivision, vacation of right-of-ways. So a lot of these things that our town engineer might really have the final say in, I'm the one who gets us through the process. Applications come to me, and then they're routed to different departments. I'll go over these different types of processes in a little bit. But I'm the point of contact for a lot of these reviews. Our local planning agency, like I said, is one of the boards that I'm liaison to. Two of the things that they hear about the most are comprehensive plan amendments and zoning changes. The local planning agency is a recommending body. They do not make final decision. They make a recommendation that then comes to town council for final decision. But the same members who sit on our local planning agency also sit on our Board of Adjustment. And our Board of Adjustment is a decision-making body. And they will make final decisions on things like special exceptions, variances, and appeals from administrative officials. The only time I've ever seen appeals from administrative officials are two decisions I made down here in the town of Lake Placid. No other municipality I've ever worked on, but the local planning agency ruled in favor of my interpretation of the code both times. I'm sorry, that was the Board of Adjustment who ruled in favor. So our local planning agency / Board of Adjustment members include Dustin Woods, who's the chairman and he's the pastor of a church. We have Haas Compton, who's a realtor, and I know he owns a lot of land in town. I'm not sure if he currently owns any businesses, so if I left that out and he does own a business, I apologize. We have Donald Clark, who owns a pest control company, Dr. Oxer, who runs his own dental office, Jack Edgman, who owns a lead manufacturing company, Chris Duncan, who's a realtor, and last I heard, owned 2 businesses in town. It might be reduced down to 1 at this point because he's making moves. We have Gary Freeman, who was our former utilities director, but also owns a retail business in town. So our LPA and BOA is currently made up of a lot of local business owners, and it is a diverse bunch. It's supposed to be a diverse bunch. And my goal many times with our LPA and BOA is if we don't have a hearing and I'm not completely swamped with cases, we like to try to get together and at least have an education component to our meeting where we might talk about policies, procedures, issues we have in our code, and we just, until we can get to the point of maybe fixing some of those issues, we at least hash it out, we come up with ideas. This particular board has really wanted to be a working board, so they want to help me work through some of these issues that we have. So as time allows, we really put our brains together, and I just explain all that because I want to put the emphasis on the knowledge that the LPA and the BOA have, this particular knowledge where that's why they are a recommendation body and their input is greatly valued by the town council because they get that extra time with me and sometimes our attorney or whoever else may be available to get more education in these matters. So, back to the local planning agency. We're going to talk about the 2 different types of hearings that come across their desk the most. And again, they provide recommendation only, but their recommendation should carry a lot of weight. And on the left-hand side of the screen, we'll go over comprehensive plan amendments. These are also called future land use changes. But not every comprehensive plan amendment is a future land use change. So we have a map, a future land use map. We can change the future land use for each particular parcel on that map, but they're not always a comprehensive plan amendment because we have our comprehensive plan And sometimes we go in there and we change the text. So that's me kind of really getting in the weeds, but a future land use change is a comprehensive plan amendment. A comprehensive plan amendment isn't always a future land use change. Let that sink in for a moment. Okay. So comprehensive plan amendments or future land use map amendments are considered legislative. They are the creation of policy. In the next slide, I'm going to go over the difference between legislative decisions and quasi-judicial decisions. So just know that legislative creates policy. So the point of our comprehensive plan is to create policy, the policy of how we manage growth as a town. If we're doing a future land use map amendment, there's 3 different ways the hearings can go. And this has changed in recent years, so it can get a little confusing, but I'm always here to answer questions. We have small-scale future land use map amendments. These are amendments that are under 100 acres. Now, not everywhere in the state of Florida is considered a small scale when they amend 100 acres. The only reason ours is considered a small scale when it's 100 acres or less is because we are located in an area, a rural opportunity area. Highlands County and some of the surrounding counties, based on the size and the nature of our counties, makes us rural areas of opportunity. Outside of rural areas of opportunity, a small scale is 50 acres or less. So we have double the leeway. We have, if it's 100 acres or less, it's a small scale. That means we go ahead and we process it, we adopt it here after our local planning agency meeting and 2 town council meetings, because ordinances always get read 2 times by the town council. The first meeting we have with the local planning agency is a public hearing. The second meeting we have with the town council is an introduction to the ordinance. The third meeting we have is adoption and approval or denial of the ordinance. Okay. So when we do a small scale, we go through that process 1, 2, 3 meetings over the course of 2 months, and we're done. If it's an expedited state review, meaning the hearing is over, or the parcel is over 100 acres, or requires text amendments. So right now, Grand Isles, that we're working on, and will come before you soon, is considered a expedited state review, formerly known as a large scale. This parcel, as you all know, was under 100 acres, but back in the day, and not too long ago really, the threshold used to be 20 acres. And you had to, or if you wanted to, you could add text into the comprehensive plan to regulate your development. Because we are amending the text that's already in our code from a previous large scale, that is why Grand Isles comes before us as a large scale, because it is considered a text amendment. Anytime we amend the text in our comprehensive plan, it is considered expedited state review. So that means we go through local planning agency meeting as a public hearing. Then we have our first hearing with the town council, also in this case, a public hearing. And then we send out our package, like that giant staff report that I create and the ordinance and all the proposed changes. We send it out to all these different state agencies for their comment. I have 10 days to do that. And then it's 30 days for them to offer comment. So after that period of time, then we have our third town council meeting, which is when we either approve or deny. I don't expect you all to remember this. I'm just kind of going over it. And every time a case comes before you, it'll be in my staff report. And then coordinated state review, we are going to almost never see this, but we will definitely see it at least every 7 years, because we have something that we have to do every 7 years called our evaluation and appraisal reports. That means we go through our comprehensive plan. This is really deep, long-range planning, that thing that I was talking about earlier that's kind of hard to get to sometimes. What we'll probably do, and what Highlands County is doing right now, they are going through their evaluation and appraisal report process. It's basically when you go into your comprehensive plan and you say, hey, this is everything I need to update from the last 7 years that we just haven't been able to get around to. And there's also been these Florida statute changes that we need to comply with too. So let's go into our comprehensive plan and extend our planning period out another 20 years. Right now, our comprehensive plan goes into the year 2030. When we do our evaluation and appraisal report, we're going to extend it out until 2050. So it's really intense, it's a really deep process, and we will likely hire out a consultant. We'll probably get a grant to do that. That's what Highlands County is doing. That's what City of Sebring is doing. I've been attending City of Sebring vision meetings to see how their process has been going so that I can prepare for when we go through our process. Like I said, we only do it every 7 years. So as a planner, I have seen it done one time for the town of Lake Placid in my tenure, but at that time we didn't propose any changes, so we didn't have to go through the whole process. That was in 2020. So that happens very infrequently, and it is a longer process where the state looks at our documents. They actually care very deeply about what we're proposing and what we're doing. Okay, hopefully that's the longest explanation I have for anything else going forward. Zoning changes. These are considered quasi-judicial. So we talked about how the comprehensive plan manages growth. That is our vision. You'll hear me say that all the time. It is our vision for how growth should be managed in our town, and it sets policy for how we're going to do it. But zoning defines the rules and laws governing the design and development guidelines. So if I say we're going to allow 3 dwelling units per acre in the future land use, over here in zoning, we're going to say, yes, and we're going to make the minimum lot width 80 feet and the minimum lot size 10,000 square feet and the minimum height of each structure, or maximum height of each structure, 35 feet. Because these are going to be the rules that implement our vision. There's 2 kinds. This probably isn't a technical term. I just call it straight zoning or planned development. A straight zoning district would be something like C1, highway commercial, or R1A, single family residential. These are zoning districts that we already have established in our town and part of our code, that if a parcel has these designations, you open up our land development regulations and you can identify exactly what the rules and regulations are. But if you have a planned development, that is when someone comes in, and it's not always, in some areas, a planned development is really something that like a developer wants to do because they want to do something to get around the rules, or not necessarily get around, but they have an innovative idea that isn't covered in our documents. Because if you think about our land development regulations, they were established in the 1970s. So it's so easy for them to become outdated and so hard to keep up with them, right? So you might have a planned development where instead of having a straight zoning district like C1 or R1A, they say, well, I like the R1A district, but I want to tweak it this way and allow this to be different than what is usually allowed outright as a permitted use or a permitted design standard. In the town of Lake Placid, we have something that triggers the requirement for PD, which I'll get into in a couple of slides. So what is the difference between legislative versus quasi-judicial? Oh, I'm doing good on time. Okay, I'll slow down a little. Legislative decisions, they involve policy formation. That is why a comprehensive plan amendment / future land use map amendment is considered legislative, because it is the formation of policy. When we talk about standard of review, this means if someone doesn't like our decision as town council and they want to challenge it in a court of law, the standard of review, meaning what they have to prove, the challenger has to prove, is fairly debatable. This is difficult. This is a hard thing to challenge in a court of law. The burden of proof, meaning what the challenger has to show, is simply that the decision was arbitrary and capricious. It's pretty subjective. So again, that can be hard. It requires less process than a quasi-judicial hearing, like a zoning change. There is no right to cross-examination. And I've seen Bert do this before, where, so if you're an applicant and you want to challenge someone's expert witness testimony, you can stand up there at that podium and say, and who are you? Where did this information come from? Correct me if I'm wrong, Bert. Prove to me that you're presenting competent, substantial evidence. So in a legislative decision, like a future land use change, you cannot do that. But in a zoning change, you can. It does not provide the same level of due process protection, which I'll get to in just a moment. And the standard afforded to local government is more deferential. So in a quasi-judicial decision like a zoning change, that is the application of existing policy to a specific development application. So again, we're applying the rules to a policy that's already in existence. The standard of review, I won't butcher this word, but there are things you have to, like if you want to challenge the town council's decision, as say I'm an applicant, and I want to challenge your decision because you told me no on a zoning change. I would be challenging whether the procedural due process was afforded. Like if I'm an applicant and you said, you only have 30 seconds to present your case, maybe that applicant didn't get due process. Whether the local tribunal observed the essential requirements of law, and whether the local government's decision was based on competent, substantial evidence. So if you make a decision on zoning and say, well, I just think it might rain on your property one day, and I just think that's a bad idea. Like, that's not going to be competent, substantial evidence. But if you say, the meteorologist came to the hearing and proved that it is going to, you're within a 100-year flood zone and your property is going to be completely washed out, and any structures you put in that property will then pose a danger to everyone in that area, that might be competent, substantial evidence. So burden of proof. In this case, again, I'm pretending to be the applicant. The burden is on me to demonstrate that I comply with all the applicable criteria for approval by competent, substantial evidence. And if you tell me no, you have to tell me why. Because the burden then shifts to the local government, which is you all, the town council, to justify the denial. Okay. Adequate notice has to be provided. An opportunity to the applicant to be heard must be provided, and they must be provided fair treatment, and you all as town council must act as impartial decision makers. Ex parte communication, which is that list of people that you talk to before the hearing, whether they're in favor or opposed to the hearing, has to be provided. You can have that communication. You just have to keep a list. And the decision has to be based on the correct application of the law, and again, competent, substantial evidence in the record. So we go on to the Board of Adjustment, which makes final decisions. These hearings are quasi-judicial. The Board of Adjustment runs quasi-judicial hearings, which requires that ex parte communication, requires competent substantial evidence. The burden of proof is on the Board of Adjustment to say why they might not have approved something. So I talked about administrative appeals. That's like, I won't focus on it very much, but for example, at one point someone came in and our code said no neon lighting or anything like neon lighting. So when the applicant came in with LED strip lighting surrounding the outside of their building, I said that doesn't meet our architectural design standards because it's just like neon lighting. It might not be it. And again, think about our code. It's outdated. It started in the 1970s. So it gives us that wiggle room for anything that's neon lighting or like neon lighting. So my interpretation is it is like neon lighting. We cannot allow it. Actually, thinking back, I might have been overruled on this one. But I said, and they just insisted, no, I'm telling you, this is not neon lighting. It's not like Las Vegas. It's totally different. So they came before our Board of Adjustment, and our Board of Adjustment made a decision. That would be an administrative appeal. I made a decision in my day-to-day work. There wasn't a hearing involved or anything. I told the applicant yes or no on a particular thing. They disagreed, and they came before the Board of Adjustment for a different opinion. Okay, so something else the Board of Adjustment does is called special exceptions. Special exceptions is all about use of a property. A special exception is a use that would not be appropriate generally or without restriction throughout the zoning district, but which, if controlled as to number, area, location, or relation to the neighborhood, would promote the public health, safety, welfare, morals, order, comfort, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Such uses are permitted in such zoning district as a special exception where specific provisions for such exception is made in this chapter. So in the zoning code, in the zoning district, it has to say, for example, we can look at our firework tent sales, right? So the tents are considered a temporary building by our code. They're considered temporary. Our code allows, it explicitly says there in the zoning district, temporary buildings are allowed for 3 months out of every 18-month period with a special exception. That means you have to get that special permission. And there's conditions that might be applied. And so we have some that are like that. And in this case, there will be another one coming up because they put like an expiration date on it. They said, well, we want to see how this goes. And if it works out, then come back and reapply and maybe we'll extend it for longer. They might say at that hearing, these are the types of signs you can have or not have with your special exception. It has to be this far away from a driveway entrance for safety reasons. These are the types of conditions they might apply. So again, that's all about use. And so we're talking about the number of it. So they might say, yes, you cannot have 50 tents on one property. That would be too much. Or, yeah, I think we could allow it if they're spaced every 1,000 feet apart. So then we get into variances. Variances are dimensional in nature. They have to do with measurements. So a variance is a modification of the zoning regulations which allows one or more district regulations to be relaxed in favor of the owner when such variance will not be contrary to the public interest and when owing to conditions peculiar to the physical aspects of the real property in question and not the results of the actions of the applicant. A literal enforcement of the regulations would result in unnecessary and undue hardship. A variance is authorized only for the height, so dimension, area or size of a structure, or size of yards and open space, all dimensions. The establishment or expansion of a use otherwise prohibited under this code shall not be allowed by variance. Right? Doesn't have to do with use, right? Just dimensions. nor shall a variance be granted in violation of the provisions of subsection 153-22(8) or as to the use or residential density of a parcel. No variance shall be granted because of the presence of nonconformities in the zoning district or classification or in adjoining zoning districts or classifications. So I really want to highlight, this is what I really look at when I look at variances and when someone asks if a variance is an option for their property. Right where it says, owing to conditions peculiar to the physical aspects of the real property in question and not the result of the actions of the applicant. So if someone comes in and says, I just want to build my house out lot line to lot line, I just need more room, I just think it would be better that way, I have 600 kids and they need more room. That might be a hardship. That's hard to have that many kids, but it is not a hardship owing to the physical attributes of the land. So if that person came in and said, well, my lot is really irregularly shaped and I can only expand on the east side because on the west side, even though I have a lot of room there, the slope is very difficult to build on. It would be very burdensome to try to place a structure there due to the geographics of the site. And there's also wetlands I can't build in. Like, the land itself has an issue, not the property owner. That is what needs to be proven during a variance. Okay, so I said we would get into the trigger of a PD. That stands for planned development. It is a type of zoning. The LPRP, which stands for the Lake Placid Regional Plan Area, the LPRP Overlay District is a planning tool to guide the transition of the Lake Placid area into a planned community and allows the annexation of properties into the town to ensure development has public infrastructure. As a result of this LPRP, we are going to look at every individual development and make sure it meets the intent of our code. And I'm going to show you a map in a moment that's going to help things be a little bit more clear. All development within the Lake Placid Regional Plan Area shall be accomplished using a planned development. This is straight from our code. There shall be no land use change, plat, rezone, or subdivision without a PD. Then it says, with the exception of existing agricultural uses and developed lands, including existing single-family units following annexation. Okay, so this map is really important. Everything in purple and orange, all of those colors, that is considered our LPRP. But we have two slightly different standards for the purple areas and the orange areas. I'll categorize those pinkish areas with the purple too, because it says the LPRP outside of the developed historic town area. So on this map, the developed historic town area is brown. Outside of the brown areas, so the pink and the purple, shall be guided by density policies allowing for a maximum of 3 dwelling units per gross acre by encouraging clusters with net densities not to exceed 12 units per acre. And what that means is, say you have a 50-acre lot and you want to put all of the homes closer to each other, cluster them on smaller lots and cluster them to be a little bit smaller. You could get up to 12 dwelling units per acre in that area as long as the overall parcel, including all the open space and all the other lands on that 50-acre parcel, does not exceed 3 dwelling units per acre for the total calculation. But you could make them so small that in that little area, if you did the math on that little area where the lots are, it could get up to 12 dwelling units per acre. And that's a lot of the intent of the LPRP. You'll see throughout the LPRP regulations, we want our green space, we want our open space. Now, I couldn't get into everything here with the LPRP because it's really dispersed all throughout our code, but an area where a lot of the regulations intended for the LPRP are centered is the PD district, because a PD is triggered by almost anything you do in the LPRP. If you have a piece of land, a 50-acre piece of land, and it already has future land use for commercial, you can go ahead and develop commercial, no PD required. If it has the future land use and the zoning, everything's consistent, I cannot require a PD for you to develop with the existing entitlements in place. You already have that in place. But say you want to subdivide that land, then you have to go for a PD zoning change. In the purple areas, our signage requirements are a little bit more stringent. But this is a coordinated area, so all those purple areas aren't currently annexed in town. Some of that, or a lot of that, most of those purple areas are in the unincorporated Highlands County. And that is why our LPRP requires a lot of intergovernmental coordination. That is why you get those emails from me that say, hey, we have this development coming within 300 feet of our LPRP boundary or inside the LPRP boundary. So if you have a comment, please provide a comment and I'll forward that on to the Planning and Zoning Office, who will incorporate it as part of their staff report and let the applicant know that we've made a request or a comment. We also have to do the same thing. So if there's any development within 300 feet inside town limits, within 300 feet of the unincorporated county, we have to notify them as well. Oh boy, now I'm starting to, okay, speed back up. So in 2006, we have to talk about process. Oh no, I only have 8 minutes to do this. We have to talk about the process of commercial site plan review, zoning, future land use, all of these things, right? But it's really important to know that in 2006, we adopted a big chunk of Highlands County's land development regulations, 13 different areas, including, you see number 3, plats, site plans, and improvement plans. Number 4, transportation. The county runs our transportation concurrency for us. We here in town, we don't determine if the traffic's going to be too much or too little. We leave that to the county. Everything else, we've adopted their rules, but we regulate it. We are the ones who administer it. So I'm still the one, even though we take a section of their code and we say we're going to use that as our guideline and our tool, usually I'm the one who will do the cross-checking and say, okay, well, we regulate this using that code, but come through me. Call me, come through me. So we use Highlands County Fire Code, so we adopted their portion of the code, the building code. We use the Highlands County's building official. So to make it a little bit more, maybe seamless, I hope. This is an example of a residential building permit. It is literally like a checklist. You see, I highlighted each department that everyone has to go to. The first department that anyone goes to, say they're building a new house, is going to be zoning. I'm going to check the zoning and make sure it's okay. So I go ahead and check that off. I'm also doing planning. So the Highlands County building permit, doesn't necessarily follow what we might need for a town for planning, but I go ahead and I check everything for planning too. And then internal to us, looks like I forgot to highlight it, the engineering department, that is our driveway approval. It's a totally separate process. There's a totally separate permit for it. Our town engineer is in charge of administering that permit application process and working with our team to carry out those inspections. But when I'm signing, or the town engineer is signing this building permit application, they're saying that they have gotten a driveway permit. They're good to go. So those are the areas we look at. But then we say, all right, thank you very much for checking with us. All of this is good to go. Here's your permit back. Take it to Highlands County Addressing, make sure that's okay for 911. Then take it to the building department. They're going to review your building plans. And you also have to go to the health department in case you're using well or septic. Say someone only wants a fence. In that case, I'm only doing zoning department. None of the other departments will be looked into, and they take that permit after I sign it up to the Highlands County Building Department. I try to be really user-friendly. If people are technology-friendly, I will email it for them and copy them on it. I try to scan the documents so that people take less trips. So I'm really cognizant of that. So what is concurrency? Concurrency is the first step in the commercial review or subdivision process. Concurrency means to provide the means of evaluating proposed development orders to ensure that level of service standards adopted in the county's comprehensive plan are maintained, and that public facilities and services needed to support development are available concurrently at the time with the impacts of such development. So each concurrency application, I check it off. The town engineer has final say and approval over it, but I will review it and I look at the project overview. They tell us what they're building, how big it is. They provide us a concept plan. And then again, it's just like a checklist. They have to give us a letter from utilities saying they have potable water or wastewater. The electric provider that they will be able to serve the site. Telephone provider can serve the site. Traffic, that means they have gone to the county, they got traffic concurrency. That means approval stating that they will meet the standards for traffic as established by the Highlands County Land Development Regulations. Drainage and stormwater, that's really hard. We basically, in any application, just ask them to say, yes, they are going to comply with stormwater and drainage because it's regulated by the Southwest Florida Water Management District. And we don't really get into the nitty-gritty of drainage and stormwater until we go through the actual site plan review. So at this point, they're just saying, yeah, we're aware that we're gonna have to get a permit through the Water Management District, and we will do that as soon as, you tell us it's okay to go. Parks and recreation, if this is a residential development, is there enough parks as established and determined by our comprehensive plan? Are there enough parks outside of your development? Are there enough parks inside of your development? That is supposed to say solid waste, not waster, but, do we have enough capacity at the landfill? And does our public works department, will they be able to get enough trash cans? Or I've run into issues where someone's like, yeah, I'm gonna use a trash compactor. And they've been like, wait, no, we don't have a garbage truck for that. So, these are the kinds of things we look at before you even submit plans to us. And also, if it's a residential development, do our schools have enough room? So they get us a letter from the school saying, yes, we have enough room. If not, they have to build a school site or do something. I haven't come into that problem yet. Okay, plan review. See this flow chart? It is from the Highlands County Technical Standards Manual, which is a part of the Highlands County Land Development Regulations. It is kind of built in a circle. That is because someone submits an application. Within 10 days of that application, I send them a letter telling them whether or not it's complete. Once it's complete, that means that they send me all the forms. People like to send me things all the time with just like a set of plans, but without any of the backup information. So I check it, I say, okay, this is not complete, send it back. They send it back to me. Finally, I have all the documents I need. We're going to determine this is complete, okay? So then after I send that letter, we have 15 days with our development review committee. That is other agencies like fire, Highlands County engineering, we check with Public Works. I should have put the list up there, but basically anyone who has skin in the game at the public sector level. And we say, do you have any issues with this particular development? And almost every time someone comes back with a comment, including myself as town planner, I usually say, hey, you sent me the document, but you didn't even provide setbacks, so I don't even know how far away the building is from the lot line, or something like that, right? So once it goes through Development Review Committee, either we say, yes, this is beautiful, this is everything we needed and everything we asked for according to our land development regulations, you can go ahead and build. So in an ideal world, you see that would be a total of 25 days. Or we send it back and say, actually, we have these comments, Natural Resources says you are building in a wetland, please show environmental report and provide these other things that are lacking. A lot of times in a town like Placid, we have issues with landscaping because we have really intense landscaping requirements. And if someone submits a plan, anyone that's local usually puts together a really good plan, but if someone submits a plan that isn't familiar with our land development regulations for landscaping, we have to go back a couple times and say, check this out, what about this? So in an ideal world, it would be 25 days. That almost never happens. Usually, we are looking at 6 to 9 months, because after I send that first request for additional information, the engineer that's running submitting the plans, they take some time. They're really busy. They have a lot on their plate too, and they got a lot going on. So sometimes it takes a couple months to even get it back from them. Then it goes through another 30-day review process with us. So it kind of goes in a circle over and over and over again until everything is addressed, all the comments are addressed, and we are able to issue what's called a final development order. Same for subdivision platting. So everything I just told you about is what we do for the preliminary plat process. Once preliminary plat, just for confusion's sake, okay, I see. Preliminary plat, a plat is for subdivision. If you create 3 parcels or more with whatever you're doing, you need to subdivide your property. It's like a formal recording showing exactly where the lot lines are supposed to be and exactly what you're proposing. So I happen to have this one of Lake June Point because I accidentally saved it as my background. That's how you really know you're a planner, when you just like shut down your computer one day and all of a sudden you have like a plat as your background because you accidentally saved it when you were working on something. Yeah. Anyway, so then you come back and you have to do your improvement plan showing this is how we're going to build the roads, this is how we're going to do the stormwater, this is where we're going to insert the water and wastewater connection points. And after that's all done internally and administratively by our staff in here. And then they've already done the work, they've already done the construction, but they have to come back and say, all right, this is exactly how we built it. We ran into this issue, so we shifted this lot line a little bit, and this is our final plat, and this is everybody's name on it who reviewed it, and everyone's okay with it. So we're gonna bring it to the town council for final approval. Town council does get final approval of the final plat. All right, and then there's me. So let me know if you all.
Can you back up to the overlay chart real quick? I just had a question. What's so the white area we're not responsible for? Placid Lakes we're not responsible for? Is that Sun and Lake South?
Correct, all the large subdivisions, no, Sun and Lake South, Sylvan Shores, Highlands Park, Placid Lakes, Leisure Lakes, any of those are.
So the white, I can just, by your color code here, the white, we're not, that's all county?
Correct.
And then you were going to talk about the pink areas?
So those are considered developed historic town area. Unfortunately, the LPRP doesn't really, undeveloped historic town area. The LPRP doesn't really do the greatest job of addressing that in text. It only talks about the developed historic town area in brown and then everything else. It just kind of classifies it as everything else. So the pink and the purple are subject to the same regulations.
And those are under our decisions.
The pink is definitely. The purple, some of the purple areas are in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Since annexation. This map is a little bit old. It's part of our comprehensive plan, and we've annexed a lot of land since then.
Any other question? Okay, so all of this just kind of leads to, and I won't go in, we have current projects, we have a long list of those. Most of those you see in our director's reports. I'll get through them just real quick, but, and some of them you're going to have, part of the workshop is you're going to make decisions on a lot of these tonight. So we have new police station, pickleball courts, Bicentennial Park acquisition, which is 151 Dow Hall. We're working with the county on pedestrian crosswalk at Main and Dow Hall. Been working with them on a sidewalk on Interlake and Tangerine to Catfish Creek. You're going to see a technical assistance grant for the historic area and US 27 overlay. We're working on public records and ADG financials and moving them into the cloud to provide better security for ourselves. Police Department's working on an accreditation project. We've issued purchase orders to pave Service Alley and overlay part of South Oak and Jackson Street. And then you get into all the utility projects, the pipe bursting on their lake. We're going to talk about that later in the meeting. The Lake Placid Camp and Conference Center, the wastewater line that's underway for construction, the water line that we're working on, the loan application with them, the wastewater treatment plant where we're negotiating, trying to get a contract signed. We got water and wastewater line extensions, cell phone radio read meters that we're underway. Got 150 installed, but we've got 3,200 total. So we got a long way to go. It's a 5 to 6 year project. SCADA system for water plants and lift stations. These are all, and then the chlorine gas conversion. These are all current projects that we're working on. We're very busy. A lot of stuff happening inside the town. But if there's any other questions, but as we move forward, if there's goals or visioning that you want to look at, how your comp plan is what they decided years ago that they wanted the town to look like. How do you tighten those up? How do you make those meet with your current vision? And as the council changes and you have new members, you have a little bit slightly different vision necessarily than they did 20 years ago. So you might want to change some of those. What projects do you want us to work on? So we're the staff, we're working for the council and the mayor. And so the goal is just trying to figure out what the direction is for us. And so that was kind of the purpose for this. If there's anything specific or any other questions, we can go ahead and address those now. We can address them at the meeting later. We can address them any month moving moving forward. But that's kind of it.
Just real quick, I have some questions, just the format of the agenda. So when an agenda comes out, and we have the number one consent area, right? The first group is the consent area, the agenda, the meetings and that. And then, and maybe I was confused because last month it had the Smoke Foundation, the Run for Pancakes, these other things, but we didn't discuss it. It was in the package. So I was thinking we were supposed to discuss them, and then that's how you approve it? Or is everything under consent, just what's in the package? We take a look at it, and then we make a motion based on that information to approve it or not?
Consent is, and the attorney will correct me if I'm wrong, consent is just that. If you have a question on it, you make a motion to remove it from the consent, and you move it down into an action item. Otherwise, if there's no questions, it's consent. There's no discussion on those items. So it's a motion to approve the whole agenda. So if you want to pull item D on the monthly bills, you want to pull those, you're going to say, I make a motion to pull item D out of the consent agenda. We'll move it into, and the mayor will make it 1A, or it won't be 1A, but it'll be an item. So it may be 3A, it may be 2A, whatever, wherever he decides to put it in the agenda, and it'll go in that as an action item as opposed to the whole consent. So, and then you used to see consent 1, consent 2, because if there were any bills to Royce Supply, that was a conflict, so then that prevented Councilman Royce from voting on consent 1, so it was always a separate consent 2 item. We don't have consent 2 because we don't have that same issue today, that scenario today. So it's all under consent agenda 1, so there's no items into consent agenda 2, and then you roll through.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments or concerns from the public? If not, we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. If you have a comment, you need to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And please, sir, when you're in chamber, I'd ask you to remove your...
Sorry.
Thank you.
Bill Rios, 91 Grandview Boulevard. I'm here to inquiring on the police station. I understand that you were talking about, it came to my attention that you were saying that you want to take a building and reconstruct it inside and make it into a police station. Police stations aren't that easy to make. And if they don't have the proper construction or facilities inside, it's not going to be a police station. You need, I've been in law enforcement for 45 years. I did 20-some-odd years in New York City and another 20-some-odd years with the U.S. Marshals. I've been in a lot of police stations. I've been all over the United States for them. And a police station, first of all, needs the proper rooms, the proper facilities for a holding pen, and for proper rooms for interrogation, and most of all, the heart of it is the evidence room. That evidence room cannot be near any exterior walls to that precinct. It has to be central. It has to have the proper air, condensation to control the humidity, AC, the whole 9 yards. And there only has to be one entrance. And it has to have at least a camera, audio, just like in the interrogation rooms. You have to have cameras, audio. It has to have at least 2 male cells, 2 female cells. Reason for that, you can't just put guys that are fighting in the street together in one room. Then you're gonna have a suicide in there. So they have to be separated. Females, the same thing, unless you wanna have a cat and dog fight. A precinct has to be properly made, and the entrance, the exits have to be properly controlled electrically. You just can't take a building and say, oh, we'll construct the inside and do all the layouts and all. It's not gonna work. You have a precinct, I understand, you have a paperwork already made up for a new precinct. And if you're gonna make it, you have to make it so that it meets the criterias that you have nowadays. The old days are gone. You have to have the proper stuff. And you have to have the proper rooms for computers, for printing, for photograph, the whole 9 yards. You just can't take a building and say, oh, we'll construct a precinct in this building. It's not gonna work. You can't do it. If you have the precinct already laid out, and you have the area, and you have the funds for it, do it. Give the community a proper precinct. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think most of those issues have been addressed or being addressed as we talk, so, okay. Thank you. Any other comments? If none, we'll adjourn this meeting.
Next meeting starts at 5:30.
Yeah. Yeah. Consider yourself. Did you take your glasses? Your lens just fell out.
Oh,
Mr. Harris, I have. I did. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
Some sandwiches and stuff in the back.
oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll go back. just started today.
Oh, you just started.
So I can't really tell you, and I don't know whether I can eat the fruit. I forget, you know.
I think the blueberries and that kind of stuff, you can have blueberries, strawberries, raspberries.
That's right.
Just stay away from oranges and bananas and that kind of stuff.
Okay. I figure I'll make mistakes, you know. So far, I've been good today, so far, you know.
Not easy.
Nothing is
Preaching
easy
a
when
great-
you- Nothing is easy.
No.
So I
And the older we get, it's harder to get off. Yeah, me too.
I'm just not tired of it all. And I'm just not. I tried just eating less and stuff like that, and then there's pizza, you know. But see, on keto, I can eat pizza. I just eat the
Don't
cheese.
eat
and
the cheese, you could eat,
I
that's right.
don't eat the crust, you see. I can eat pizza. It's almost one of the reasons for keto.
Well, I'll give you a really good, it's really good. Take some fresh blueberries. Okay. Get the sugar-free cheesecake pudding. Right? You got stevia. It's all keto friendly.
Yes.
And put your plastic down, wash them up, put a little tape, like a teaspoon of stevia in there, sprinkle some of that pudding in there, mush it around, lay it flat in the plastic baggie and freeze them. Really? A little Cool Whip on top. Oh, man, they are good.
Cool. I have to try
Yes,
that.
and they're refreshing too. Yeah, so try that. That was really good. That was my most recent. John, yes, one voice. Yes, John voice. And I know him, and he knows me all the time. And I never. There you go. Huh? Oh, did you let them know?
I haven't made an announcement or
Okay.
anything. I didn't know if that was okay.
This is okay.
Okay. Yeah. Miss Nell was okay.
Huh?
Miss Nell was okay. She came back and looked.
Oh, she came back and looked. Who else were we looking for?
I think Mr. Mayor's already back there.
I was thinking about giving it to the seniors. It's at the PD in my office. I have it. That's what I was thinking. And I was thinking maybe we'll do something else. I was thinking. I'm still looking. They just. I went down, they don't have anything. I looked at one more chiefs. I've been looking for that because the memorial, all the past chiefs, you got George, all of them. We're better than one of mine. Miles Miller. Yes.
I was 13.
Miles Miller, and there was another one that I never remember.
I was going to walk on.
Well, he has the coolest picture though. He's bought a pickup truck, County Marshal star on the door. That was the coolest picture. I'm like, yeah.
and that's why I kept talking to her. She told me, she finally told me. And I maybe I'll do something. They all were definitely different. But yeah, I figured out. We might be able to, like I said, you'll just watch it. Yes, and I don't know.
you, dear?
See you. And you're walking around so much better.
I'm getting there. I still have spinal stenosis. That's what I got to get taken care of next. But Susan's having her knee replaced July 17th. That's when we get back from vacation. So I'm not going to get my back. That's why my legs go numb. That's why I need a cane for balance.
Yeah. Good to see you. Everything good at ESO?
As far as I know, it's been kind of slow, I guess. I'm trying to get them to have Scotty, PIO, do our dispatching for us because we don't get called out as often as I think we should get called out at the scenes. So Scotty takes care of the comfort box. So I suggested to Major Hood that maybe we switch us over too because he's on most scenes. And he has a different perspective.
Well, that's what I texted him the other day about something else, and I said, I hear you're in charge of the therapy.
He said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get paid. Major Hood is a great guy to work with. I don't like bothering him, but he's a great guy to work with. I really like him.
I forgot about that door.
Yeah, good to see you. Be careful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go see if I brought a jacket. Yeah.
Good, how are you? Good to see you. Still hanging around town, I see.
Hey. I could take my money and run, but I'm gonna stay.
Oh, okay. Hey, John, how you doing, kid?
Doing good, how are you?
Not as good as you and Mark. Yeah.
Nowhere else to go.
It's true. So you had the kids over for dinner for Mom's Day.
Actually, we went to Olive Garden.
Yeah, was that where you were at? Backyard, so.
Yeah, did we come back to the house? No, we didn't. Yeah.
I do not, but if you'll talk to Dana, she's got it. She just had it up on the screen a few minutes ago. That's the map, but then there's a whole bunch of documents that go with it. It's pretty cool.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. It was approved by the county and the town. It goes to Placid.
One of the plans I heard about, it never seemed to either.
Still State Road 8 is 4 lane.
Well, that's probably part of it. Because when you add up